Do you recognize this gentleman? Anyone? No? He's Mr. Roger Boyce-Jory. His name is there. He has an important place in history. The story goes back to January of 1986. NASA was planning to launch its shuttle, Challenger. The launch had been deferred several times, so they were under pressure to launch. One night before that, they had a call with their contractor who was working on this shuttle called Theocall, and Mr. Rogers was one of the engineers there. And they were trying to check whether shuttle is safe to launch or not. Mr. Rogers and their team didn't agree. They said that one of the parts in the rocket called O-ring is not safe. It cannot function in low temperature, which are predicted for next day morning. NASA was upset. So they asked Theocall, can you go back and check again? Theocall management had a meeting after a few minutes. They took out Mr. Rogers and his team, and they gave sign-off for the launch. Next morning, Challenger was launched. 73 seconds into the space, it broke into pieces. 7 crew members died. My question to you, whose fault was it? Was it NASA's fault that they pressurized Theocall to give approval? Or was it a fault of Theocall management that they gave up to the pressure and didn't agree to the engineers? Or was it engineers' fault? They knew what damage could be, right? They gave up after first hesitance. Or was it a problem of environment where disagreement was not accepted and it was not safe to disagree? Today I'll talk about this topic, what is the importance of disagreement, why we should foster it. Everything I'm talking about are my personal views. So let's start. This is a quote. When two men in business always agree, one of them is unnecessary, right? This is a thought which I have always lived with. And I've been lucky in my working life to have that kind of environment. But as I started going to a lot of institutes and talking to a lot of people in my lectures, I realized that's not the case for everyone. Not everyone gets an environment where they can safely disagree. So that created some interest, and I launched an online survey which has got some momentum, and I have some results which I'll share with you, along with some of the research report around this topic. So one question that I asked a lot of people, does your manager encourage disagreement? Only 32% said yes. And then I asked, does your organization encourage disagreement? Only 35% said yes. So clearly people know that they are not encouraged to disagree or have a differing view. And it's not this survey. Let's go to other reports. Throughout the history, 91 to 2011, people feel that they are not encouraged to disagree. They can't speak up. These reports are from various research. And what is scary is some of these research reports are coming from medical institutes, where people can't, if they can't speak up on time, it has a cost of life. So if we are not disagreeing, let's understand how the process works, right? First of all, someone has something to disagree with, right? If you don't have something to disagree and you want to disagree just for its sake, it's more dangerous, right? So let's say a person has something to speak up. Then they should be motivated enough in themselves to speak up. Third is they decide to speak up. And fourth, they actually speak up. What is important, what goes between 2 and 3? They want to speak up and they decide to speak up. A lot goes in between them. And research says people decide that based on 2 factors. This is called efficacy and safety. Efficacy means whether they think it's effective to speak up. Safety, whether they think it's safe to speak up. There are a lot of research report which says that if people think speaking up will not make any difference, they don't put their effort. If they think it's futile to make any comment, they don't speak up. If you've seen yourself in an environment where no one speaks up, that means they've given up. All this research report says that. So it's very relevant quote. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. Safety. Again, there are a lot of research reports which say that people assess whether it's safe to say or not. How it will impact their career. Will they have any negative impact on their career or not? If they think, based on their own experience or perception, that will have negative impact, they don't speak up. So my question, are people unfair in thinking that it's unsafe? Is it actually unsafe to speak up? Any thoughts? Research comes to, again, it says that it's actually unsafe to speak up. The research reports, my survey said, only 25% people thought that when they disagreed with their manager, it was positive. Largest population, 40% thought it was negative for them to disagree with their managers. It's not coming just here. An important study was done, and a study was trying to see assessed people on 4 proactive personality measures, that innovation, political knowledge, career initiative, and voice. They said these proactive measures those people have, how they progress in their career. They figured out if you have these 4 characteristics, you do very well in 2-year terms, except voice, speak up. Those who spoke up had negative impact on their career. That's a study. Another study said that they assessed the person was speaking up against status quo versus what was the manager's ranking of that. And they realized those people who spoke up against status quo, managers ranked them as threat or less loyal, and they were rewarded less. So, if it is so unsafe to disagree, should we not disagree? Should we not speak up? Before I come, let me bring another interesting aspect which I realized from my survey. So I asked, what was the reaction of your manager when you disagreed? Only 29% said positive. More than 70% said when they disagreed, the manager's reaction was negative. But that's not interesting. Interesting is, I asked them, how did you feel after your manager's reaction? And you can see only 23% felt negative. That means there's a big population where even the manager's reaction was negative, they felt positive. So at least one thing is clear. Irrespective of others' reaction, you will feel good if you're the person who wants to speak up their mind. So that's the one case, use case. But is there a way to speak up without getting negative impact in your career? Again, research comes to our rescue. Let's go back to same report. So this report said they ranked people on 4 measures, and they said everything else except speaking up had a positive impact. But there's something interesting here, right? Innovation had a positive impact, but speaking up had a negative. But in both the cases, you're trying to solve the problem. But in the one case, you are challenging others, you're complaining. Even if you're raising genuine concern, people see it as a concern. But if you innovate, that means you go with a solution. So the solution is, don't just raise the question. Go with a solution. And those who innovated actually did much better in their career. So there's a solution. What? Don't just express your disagreement, rather give possible solution. Go with a suggestion. But there's a catch here, right? What if you don't know the solution? You don't know always the solution, right? You shouldn't speak up, is it? So that's what Adam Grant had put up in his, he's a famous psychologist. He said, don't bring me problems, bring me solution. Discourages people from speaking up against biggest problem, the problems which they can't solve. So we shouldn't stop them. There's an interesting comic strip that he posted. So what is the solution? His study, famous study, gives the solution to it, and it's called Rocking the Boat and Keeping It Steady. It said that the solution is emotional regulation knowledge. That means you know how to regulate emotion, which we call emotional intelligence, EQ. He figured out that people who had higher EQ were speaking up more because they had more confidence in themselves. They could put their thoughts better together. So they were speaking up more. And he realized that the response of their managers were much better. So the idea is, can you control your emotion? Something interesting came from his graph. You can see that those who have high EQ, when they didn't speak up, their performance was low. So if you can manage your emotion, then speaking up is in fact raises your performance to a different level. So speaking up is not bad. The way you speak up makes a difference. So what you can do is control your emotion while you're expressing your disagreement. Improve your EQ. It's a learnable skill. If you have weak EQ, like me, like a lot of people, so separate generation of your idea and communication of your idea. Give yourself time to frame. But if that doesn't work, take help of your colleagues who know whose EQ is better. It's not good for everyone. Everyone has different emotion regulation capability. Take someone's help. Okay, let's go. We talked about what employees can do. Let's see what managers can do. It says that managers' openness has a high impact on voice. That means managers who are perceived to be open, they saw a lot of people speaking up. And the interesting research says that whenever managers were more open, their high performers were more open. So that means as a manager, as a leader, if you want your best talent to speak up, you need to be open and look open, appear open. Before I end, I want to complete the circle. I said people speak up when they feel safe to speak up. But safety has a different parameters, right? It's always, there's a little bit of risk in speaking up, irrespective of how safe it is. One research said that speaking up to higher ups, that says that not only direct managers, skip level, 2 to 5 level up had an impact on speaking up. People base their perception about whether it's safe to speak up or not based on how the higher level leaders behaved. Another research says that even when the managers had best of intention to allow speaking up, they gave indirect signals like being busy, not entertaining, which stopped people from speaking up. One research which is not there, which says that people stopped speaking up not only based on their own experiences, but the stories that they heard around the company and around the organization. So as a leader, be very, very careful what kind of signals we give. Because in the complex environment, as a leader, you want everyone to speak up. We are living in a very complex environment. Everyone needs to raise the issues. Before closing, I'll come to the point that I was making, that there's always a risk. And research report says that, it's a famous research which says that when the opportunity to speak up arises, those who put organization interest above self-interest speak up. Those who put self-interest above organization's interest don't speak up. So question is, what kind of employees or people you want? Those who put self-interest above or those who will put organization interest above? But everything comes at a cost. And the cost of having a loyal employee is giving value to their voice.